Indians who welcome the pilgrims, and to the buffaloes who once ruled the plain. Like the vultures circling beneath the dark clouds, looking for the rain, looking for the rain, just like the city.
Good evening. Welcome to United Black Book Clubs of Pittsburgh's virtual summer reading series. This is our fourth in the series. United Black Book Clubs is an association of librarians, readers, and members of book clubs who want to spread our love of reading. I am Lorena Amos Brock. Let me introduce you to the rest of UBBCP's members: Cynthia Battle, Evelyn King, Lois McClendon, Benita Penn, and Helen Turner. Here we are presenting Celebration of Reading virtually. Our favorite library is closed. The 2020 theme is literary healing. What does it mean to be free? Please come and let literature help heal you. We have had a bevy of authors. We have tried to do it intergenerationally. We have tried all subjects, all about healing. Children's authors, a memoir, and one on race. Today's book, Peace, Love, Respect, This is the Way, is a topic that might help us with our literary healing. We are honored to have Melvin L., our honorable politician, community leader, and healer, as your host to our author, King Sadiq. Through a grant of social justice, this always gets my tongue. Through a grant of social justice rapid response fund from New Voices for Reproductive Justice, Pittsburgh, and our fiscal sponsor, Trying Together, this reading series is possible. We thank our partners, Pittsburgh Arts and Lectures, Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, Homewood Branch, and the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. We really appreciate the hard work of Pulsus Digital Media Company for providing the technical know-how to put this program together. We know that you will have plenty of questions, so you can join in the discussion by typing your questions in the chat. Benita will give you directions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to tonight's reading. To use the chat in YouTube, on the right-hand side, the upper right-hand side, you have to log into YouTube. So it's just a couple of steps. Once you log in, you will be able to use the chat to write up brief questions. They only let you use 200 characters. And also during the reading, everyone will be on mute. After the author has done his part, we will take questions from the members of UBBCP, and then we will have questions from the chat line from our audience on YouTube. So sit back and enjoy, and remember to ask any question you need. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Well, good evening. It is a pleasure to be on this program this evening. I first want to thank UBBCP for the creativity and vision of showcasing Pittsburgh-based authors. It is certainly my pleasure to have this opportunity to present our guest author for this evening, King Sadiq. Lightworker, author, and artist is going to share with you peace, love, respect. Just before he comes on, I would like to say to Brother King that during your 15 minutes, I will be giving you a 6-minute and a 13-minute nod so that we can be within our time frame. I present to you our author, King Sadiq. Peace, love, respect.
First of all, gratitude indeed. Let me send my thanks to the Universal Prime Creator, right? For all of this to be possible. Thank you all so much, everyone involved with making this possible and presenting this series. The UBBC, I'm sorry if I misstated, but yeah, thank you everyone so much for the gracious, warm welcoming and making this possible. And all of you who are taking a moment to listen and share your time with me, I thank you from the deepest resources of my heart. All right, what I want to do now is read from you a couple of selections from my book titled Peace, Love, Respect. This is the New Way by King Sadiq. Chapter 1, Way of Life. Peace. What does that mean? More importantly, what does that mean to you? I think it means zero. Not to say nothing or even zero as a value at all. I mean zero as in a starting point or as in a foundation to build from completely flat or square, nothing, right? A completely neutral point of origination and creation. Perhaps this is why peace seems to be a concept that is proven to be unfathomably difficult to obtain on this planet. It has eluded the world's governments throughout history. The commonly known story of man on this planet has been littered with conflict, to say the least. For as far back as we can peer, man has found reason to compete with man and nature for satisfaction of our most basic needs. That has provided for an atmosphere of unbalance on either side of any significant effort towards peace. In other words, man has allowed minor differences to balloon into major conflicts that thrive off of those exaggerated differences rather than building upon the common areas of growth and potential that we all share. The result of this is a world that has been built on the foundation of division and opposition. This unstable foundation has catapulted this world into a state of unbalance, dis-ease, and ineffective linear systems that permeate every aspect of our lives. Or is that perspective accurate? Has there been any time period when man has found a sort of harmony with man and nature while meeting those basic needs? If so, then they most certainly would have had to find a place or starting point of zero, a point where neither side of an equation is unbalanced. Therefore, there is no unmet need or pull of want in either direction, negative or positive of zero. This is to say that a truly stable foundation can be built from that point. So what characteristics do we ponder when we have in mind a solid foundation? The first that comes to my mind is strength. Ever enduring strength. Logically, we can state that life of a structure is dependent on the strength or solidity of the foundation. The base of any structure must be sound and must be strong. This is also true of the base or basis of our way of life. If peace is to be one of the founding principles of our basis of our way of life, we must investigate this further. We need to delve into what has grown into an age-long problem to which the answer has been profoundly elusive. So why so elusive? What has been the most obstinate obstacle in our path? What immense obstruction has effectively and continually prevented man from living in the utopia we all have sought for so long? How about inequality? Is not inequality the enemy of any balanced equation? If one man or woman is unequal to any other woman or man, can we achieve true balance? Obviously not. So let's take off the blinders of indoctrination and propaganda and have, for many of us, our first uncensored look at the real world. To get to the root of any problem, we must think about that problem in a way that lends itself to discovery. We must think about an open mind in a pathological manner. A true pathologist diagnoses any problem or illness with the same desired outcome, to find the primary or root cause of the issue at hand. Since the problem we are diagnosing is that which has held back the human race from true peace, we're searching for that root. We're searching for the initial instance of inequality that has set this paradigm in motion. The single event or interaction that led to the onset of our problem. Now, let's be real. How can we possibly search back through the annals of time to uncover the first actual case of one human being posing him or himself as unequal or superior to another person? Instead, perhaps it is more realistic. All right.
We're at 10.
All right. Perhaps it is more realistic to search for the interaction between the earliest recorded groups of humans. To do that, we must examine man's earliest known civilizations, their cultures, artifacts, and other clues detailing their existence. Now, fortunately, for our efforts to uncover these aspects of our past, our collective past, we are given many tools by our ancestors. Early man has demonstrated an innate need to leave many forms of communication and descriptions of what daily life was like for them. They have also proven to have a multitude of means by which to pass that information forward to future generations. Let's take a look at not only those generations past, but also the myriad of ways that they accomplished the task of describing their world so effectively. All right, folks, so we're getting short on time, but I'll read something quickly from chapter 3. It's time, folks. We must take a look at this misshapen world. What's past alarming is the fact that our federal government, through the years, has empowered the monstrously giant pharmaceutical industry to almost no end over the past 50 or so years. Evidence of this shows up in plainly waves of questionable drugs that have hit the market by storm, earning so much so quickly that even when the lawsuits start, the producers can withstand the hit of liability and still make huge amounts of money. What has aided this greatly is the so-called FDA fast track used by these slick pharmaceutical companies, and many loosened regulations and loopholes found by these companies.
We're at 13.
All right. I'll finish up with another thing quickly from chapter 8. Today's grocery stores are flooded with unnatural products with all sorts of artificial ingredients and actual toxins. In previous chapters, we've mentioned how our federal government is falling short of protecting us from these shady practices of these corporations and agricultural corporations. It is these greedy corporate poison pushers who are responsible for the lack of truly healthy natural foods. All right. The regulations set forth by our so-called protective agencies like the FDA weren't loose enough. These companies even find creative ways to manipulate labels on packaging. And I know that we're running out of time.
1 minute.
All right. I want to just leave you with a thought. From the very end of the book, even if it's just that you're rooting for the underdog by reading this book, I hope that this has been a pleasantly surprising journey that you've all taken with me, on which we've grown together. I do thank you all with all of my heart. Please do read this book. And thank you for those who have read this book. You have my appreciation and love. As the bright, energetic beings that you are, who shine warmly through the smiles that I hope to see multiplied with peace, love, respect.
Thank you, Brother King. Thank you, Brother King. At this time, we're going to take an opportunity to have some questions and some conversation that'll involve some of the UBBC members with King Sadiq. So I don't know if this, who wants to start on the other side? Have a question for King Sadiq? Let us have it.
I have a question. He said something very important in the beginning about man's competitive attitude. And when you look on TV, all you see are game shows that compete people against each other, who's the strongest, who's the best. Why do you think this is? Because to me, it really bothers me that they're always competing. Why can't we just be, people?
Yes. Thank you so much for asking that question. You led me to something that I actually do talk about in the book. And it's actually two mentalities, right? The first mentality is the one that we find ourselves in for the majority of our society. And unfortunately, largely human beings as a civilization on this planet. And I call that separation mentality. The second is one that we aspire to reach to, hopefully, right, is unity consciousness. So separation mentality is predicated on just that, a perception of an individual group that they are in fact separate, they are responsible to, and have concern for only self, right? Selfish, myopic interest and perceptions that are developed only from that point, right? Because of that, we see that extend from the macrocosm of our society down all the way through the microcosm of our family, right? And it shows up in things like game shows, sports, et cetera, et cetera. If we were able to adapt unity consciousness, then we see that we actually, rather than thinking that the pinnacle of our achievement as human beings is competition, it is in fact cooperation, right? Look throughout history, the greatest feats accomplished. Look no further than the Great Pyramid of Giza as a shining example of something accomplished through cooperation. And that's a benefit and a product of unity consciousness rather than separation mentality.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question.
I have a question. Your title, Peace, Love, and Respect, I think is one which kind of resonates with everybody, because I think that's what everybody is seeking. So would you explain a little bit more, how can we really achieve this in our society today, based upon everything that's going on? How can we really achieve peace and love and mutual respect?
Thank you for asking that as well. So we've got to, I believe, in my opinion, and this is the reason, in fact, that I wrote the book in the style that I did. The style in which I wrote the book was meant to be a conversation, right? Anyone who reads the book will find that I'm often asking questions of the reader, because I believe that the only way we can accomplish this is through an introspective process, where we all sort of take from hints given us by the great Michael Jackson, right? Look in the mirror. We have to, as a society, a civilization, be mature enough to look at what our world has become, look at the systems, the institutions that affect our daily lives, and ask honest, truly brutally honest questions about those systems and the motives that keep them operating the way that they do, right? And then we need to ask ourselves, are we spiritually in line? Are we energetically, are we emotionally aligned with that? And if not, then those systems need to change. And I think it's only through that process, right, of examining self, examining ourselves as a society, examining ourselves as a civilization, and being brutally honest enough to ask the questions that we may have avoided, right? Many times throughout history. And only by looking within, I believe, we can find those answers and then come together to put them into play and make them go from being hypothesis all the way through the process of becoming policy.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. What would you say to what is happening in the world right now, particularly with the fact that we have like basically two pandemics going on right now? One is the COVID pandemic, which is really a physical and mental, and the other one is the pandemic that I'm calling the pandemic of this racial inequality and the fight for justice. So how would you framework that in what you've written in your book?
Very interesting way to put that. I like that. Yeah, very, very interesting way to put that. So first I'll talk about the racial inequality and injustice, right? Because this is something that we've dealt with the longest, right? In fact, for highly melanated people or quote unquote people of color, we have dealt with this curiously throughout the annals of time, right? And nothing is without reason, right? So there's a reason for that. I think we need to be honest enough to look not only at what has happened to us, but why. And I think when we do that pathologically, which means to go back, right? We've got to travel back beyond slavery and our experience as survivors of slaves in this country, which we didn't all arrive here as slaves, by the way. But when we look honestly at coming out of ancient Kemet or Kush, right? What things led to us encountering injustice and inequality? And what were those early motives? And I think by looking at those things honestly, which I do talk about in the book, it would be a winded conversation for me to expound on that too much now. But I think that process of looking at it pathologically and not putting on the brakes at a certain time period, but being willing to use everything that's available to us. We live in the information age, right? So much is available to us now in terms of incredible archaeological finds that dive into our history, And these things are very relevant to us. For example, the fact of them finding a woman's remains in Africa dating back over 2 million years, when the previous perception of man's existence on this planet was relegated to thousands, right? And that is something that needs to be known, right? Because maybe if all children, right, black, white, red, brown, in their education were taught things like that, it might be a little easier to have respect for individuals who look a little different for them, or in particularly the highly melanated, quote unquote, colored folks, right, that we are. I think that it starts early on in life, and those early perceptions can be molded properly if we go back pathologically and counteract those original motives and give the children what they need to grow up as people who will mature into folks who don't have those things impeding them from true justice for everybody.
I have
All right,
another
is-
question.
Let me
What do you
break in
think
for a
that you
second.
use
Tony,
the
let me
word
break in.
pathologically to mean a path? You know, like in reading this, it seems when you use the word pathologically, I was thinking like, you know, like usually that's an interesting take on the word, to travel through a path to go backwards. So I'm glad you kind of clarified that for me as to when you said pathologically what it is that you, because I get it, you know, when you
Yes,
say
ma'am.
pathologically, are you following a path, and we're following it backwards in order to sound like Sankofa to me.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're getting to the root. We're getting to the roots, right? And just to touch very quickly on what's happening with the, I mean, no disrespect to anyone who has been harmed or affected and touched by this. I have family members who have. So,
Brother King, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
We have 4 minutes, brother.
Okay, I'm gonna finish up here quickly. Yeah, but to answer that question, I call that a plandemic. Here's why. The actual virus and the plans for vaccines have been copyright written, right? Or rather have been already registered back in 2006, I believe. There was a US patent registered for that. So, you know, this is something that was known about and planned for, right? So we need to do some investigation there, because we need truth here, right? Because folks' lives are at stake, and we need to pressure the folks who are not being completely forthwith. And I have to be honest about that and say that that's important. Fortunately, YouTube has provided an excellent venue for a lot of truth about what is happening now to come out. And I have a video on my channel that talks about this and the brave medical professionals who are standing up in their videos to tell the truth about what's happening. And many of them are recording directly from inside hospitals and medical facilities, so that we know these aren't fabricated, made up videos. These are actual medical professionals, nurses, doctors, et cetera, who are concerned for all of us and giving us the truth. So it's out there. Let's be brave. Let's be mature, as I spoke about earlier. And let's seek the truth of this, and let's deal with it maturely, right? I think that's the path that we've got to take. At least that's my humble opinion.
And what a good humble opinion, Brother King. We still have some time. We can take some more questions. So who's next? I'd like to ask King Sadiq something regarding his book.
I would. So there are a lot of, I think a lot of ideas that you have, right? And this week, the latter part of this week, starting yesterday, the University of Pittsburgh is having a conference on diversity. And yesterday, Angela Davis spoke, and today, Abram Kende spoke about how to be an anti-racist. So they both are talking about actually looking at policy and systems and institutions. And you touched on first educating. So my question is that, you also talked about going all the way back to Kemet. So I think of the principles of Ma'at, of truth, balance, harmony, what is it, order, propriety, reciprocity, and so forth. So, okay, so everything that everyone did looked at that. And then from there, religions came. So we have these institutions of religion, but these same institutions are using religion and anything else to cause disharmony, the greed, and just the chaos that is in, as you're saying, in society. So my question is, how do you envision dismantling these institutions and systems?
Okay, great question. I agree wholeheartedly, right? In that we unfortunately are having institutions that are very impactful to our lives use very small differences. And I'll say small because in particular between religions, like the major religions, if you really study them, and I have, differ very little, right? In most of their doctrine. There are some differences in ideology and so forth, but to find that it turns into basis for such conflict and such problems that trickle down into our daily lives. That's something we have to address. So to answer your question, religions, I think maturity and bravery has got to play a big part there. We have got to, as individuals who see issues here, be brave enough to step up and communicate with our religious leaders and let them know that we need to see a change in doctrine that is more inclusive and focusing on inclusion rather than separation. One that does not limit discovery, right? But rather encourages each individual member, right, or follower to do their own free thinking, independent investigation to find that they'll likely come to the same conclusion. There's a lot more in common that we have than we have differing. And I think that sort of discovery and that discussion and that change in policy and on our religious in our religious institutions would be very profound, right? Because even our politicians attend their religious gathering of choice, right? Religion and spirituality, which the two things are different, but that general compass there is what points the direction for most folks, right? So if we start there, it may be impactful in some of the other ways that we need to. And of course, we need to have a lot more pressure put on the folks that we call leaders. First of all, I think there needs to be systematic refinement. We need to take a look and be honest with things that are broken, right? I believe that the voting system, this is just, of course, my personal opinion, should be 100% popular vote. We do not need any caucus, any group. We do not need any electoral college, which if we look at the reasons why that was set up in the first place, it was built on something that It's a bit nefarious, but I won't go into that because it takes time. But what we do need to see, I feel, is a popular vote, right? And we have the means to do that. We show that on screens. What is the purpose of showing everyone in these elections how many votes this one has, how many votes that one has, only for it to actually come down to the electors making the determination. That's broken, I feel. And things like that, where the people are not included in making policy. We have to change that. And that takes us becoming involved in whatever way we feel is right. I don't think we need to prescribe to anyone how to do that. But if you're doing something that resonates with you, then you will be causing change. To do nothing and to rest with apathy, I think, is what's gotten us in the boat we're in now.
This is me again. Well, then that puts, like, in terms, we have to have candidates and people who are running for these offices that are worthy of being voted for. Because right now, even though the candidates that we have, if we're looking at the presidential election, both candidates, in my opinion, are not really worthy of what we actually need and are going to do what needs to happen in this country to make this really a true, just society.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that voice needs to be heard, right? Better yet, it needs to be felt. We have far more power as the people than what we give ourselves credit for. We often toss around what if scenarios and don't follow through to find out what if. How many times have we said, what if all people of color decided, since we feel as though we're not being equally treated, particularly in various financial institutions, that we decide to hold on to our dollar for a week. No one spend any money for a week. We've talked about that, but not thought about the profound impact it would have, right? I'm saying, what if no one voted? I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just saying, what if? I'm saying we need some sort of a message that is profound enough to capture the attention of everyone involved in our system, right? The system, and the only reason I call it our system is because we have given and externalized power to it. So since we've done that, we need to take ownership and make a statement. If we have candidates that are not worthy of our vote, quite frankly and logically, why are we voting for them?
Can you let me jump in here for a second, if that's all right, and say this to you. One of the things in terms of peace, love, and respect, you spoke very clearly and very strongly in the beginning about peace. Could you do me a favor, if you don't mind? I think one of the concepts that you also speak very, very strongly about in your book is the concept of love. Let me read something, and I want to see how you respond to this, all right?
All right.
You read on page 11, it reads, "It looks like it's time to turn our focus towards yet another concept, leaving peace, that seems to be absent from our world. The concept is love." Can you speak on that, please?
Yes. So, unconditional love, to be more specific.
I want to hear that. Hey, I want to hear this one. That I read it. I want to hear.
Right. So unconditional love, and what I'm going to say won't be completely parroting from the book, but unconditional love is something that is very important to me. And I'll borrow from something that I've heard a fellow YouTuber say, Ralph Smart, quite often: peace begins on the plate. And this is not a judgmental statement. You know, folks, eat whatever you're going to eat, you know, but certainly let's try and be as healthy as we can. But this, what he meant by that statement is that when we are able to value other beings, right? The animals on this planet, the insects, right? The birds. It fosters a very fundamental essence within us that our society tends to rapidly erode from the moment we're born and introduced into this society, right? And I really honestly feel the only way we can reconnect with that and rebuild that damaged aspect of us, right, is if we are able to connect yet again with this planet that is our home. There's a statement that that I also quoted in the book, that human beings are the only beings to destroy their own nest, right? We could not survive without our planet.
Right. Wow.
We simply could not. We thrive off of this planet and everything that it provides for us. These beautiful animals are not here for us to take dominion over, these insects or these birds or anything.
Right.
Rather, they're part of an ecosystem that we once fit perfectly into, right? In harmony. And instead,
I must stop you. I must stop you at this point, right? Because one of the things I want you to tie in is the fact, though we have to take care of this house that we're living in, the earth, but how does that tie in terms of self-love for ourselves? How does that tie in how you talk about that unconditional love? How does that bring us together from peace to love and on to respect?
Sure. So as human beings, right? Again, we look at this as something that has happened early on in our development, right? As children. In fact, I'll go back further. In childbirth, which if you take a look, folks, at what happens in this Western society, medically in relationship to childbirth, and compared to what happens in the rest of the world, that's a very interesting subject. I recommend everybody look into a lot more. But what I'm saying is that even when all the chemicals that unfortunately are introduced into that very beautiful and delicate process, when those chemicals are introduced into both the mother and the child, and this is sometimes they're not, and that's a beautiful thing, but far too often and most of the time, this is part of that process. It actually interferes with the chemical process, the natural chemical process that occurs between the mother and the child, right? There is a very complex and vital chemical concoction that is created during the process of childbirth, right? And is shared between the mother and child when it's a natural process. And this I touch on because it affects us profoundly throughout our lives, right? Along with some other things in terms of attachment to our mothers, right? And this is very important. I think in society, we have allowed interruption between our family connections that are so vital, between mother and child, between father and child, between father and mother, right? Having a family that encompasses father, mother, and child, mother, father, and child, all as a unit, right? But when we have things absent like breastfeeding, which is also not only a relationship, has relationship importance, right, to our development as people, but also there's more of the vital nutrients and chemical processes of exchange that need to happen between the mother and the child. When these things are disrupted the way they are, and then all the different ways and unfortunate mechanisms in our society that work against the development, particularly of families of color, right? Which we know they are great in many, unfortunately. All these things erode our capacity for unconditional love as human beings. And that's reflective in our connection to nature and so forth. And that is something that we've got to address, and I think urgently.
Well, we're getting down the road on the time here. So let me say this to you. How do we reconnect that love with each other? That's one of the things you speak about. Is how do we reconnect as people?
Sure. Being brave
Community.
is a big part of that, right? I think being brave enough to challenge some things, like for example, I've met in recent years a lot of very awake, so to speak, and conscious young mothers who know about the importance of all these processes, right? Who've educated me on some aspects and plans they have to keep the placenta and different things that are vital to our development. So I think being brave enough for us to challenge the hospitals and the institutions to tell us that that's not the way to go, that we, don't want to do that, that challenge the use of midwives and delivery and things of that nature, challenging these things that have been set in motion in this current paradigm, or in the old paradigm rather. And again, institutionally challenging the things that teach us early on in life that we are separate. A lot of that has to do with our education. Curriculums need to be addressed greatly. We need curriculums addressed. That's a big problem as to why not only the perception of young people of color, but of white children and Asian children, all the children who should be given a very round perspective, so that when they're viewing each other, right, they're doing so with acceptance and doing so in a way that fosters unity consciousness, rather than in a way that turns into separation mentality.
Well, we're about at 7:50 according to my watch over here, unless I got a fast watch or a slow watch. But I think, King, your conversation has been very powerful and enlightening. But I just have to say one more thing about that. Once we get past institutionalized, the hospitals, the biological part of all that mother and child relationship, I want you to talk for 2 minutes and explain how can we connect as people, not the biological side of it, the humanistic side of it, the brother and sister side of it.
Sure.
That you've written about in your book.
Sure. So I think, again, that starts introspectively, right? It starts within. The first thing that we've got to take a look at is that in this society, we've got a lot of folks who are depressed. That is a very clear indication of a lack of self-love, right? So I think we've got to start, I know we've got to start there, right? And that self-love, I believe, happens as a result of us beginning the process of viewing life and self in this separation sort of a mentality. And I spoke about how that happens early in life. That separation mentality causes us to grow into individuals who view everything as very separate, and it damages our ability to feel connected to anyone, because we don't even value ourselves enough to want to connect with ourselves, to want to explore ourselves, our interests, the things that make us unique as persons. So if you do not love yourself, and you're lacking that, then you're lacking any ability to externalize that love, and for us to have unity consciousness and true unconditional love. So we've got to turn back to source, right? because that's where it all starts. That's where everything starts. Whatever you call your higher power, wherever makes you spiritually sound, we've got to start there, strengthen that, and that will in turn enable us to strengthen our view of ourselves and our self-love. And then we can radiate that as unconditional love to others, right? Everyone who we encounter. Will no longer feel comfortable with walking over someone laying on the sidewalk as though that's something that's acceptable, because we'll feel it as something that we have experienced ourselves, because we see ourselves as one, rather than that separation that allows us to be cold enough to say, doesn't concern me, right? Everything about our world has to concern us enough for us to not feel comfortable being apathetic, and enough to spur us on to take action, positive action.
But also to be empathetic and compassionate and
Yes.
understanding. We need, that's the peace and love, to be understanding, included in that. But sometimes we're apathetic, but we need to be more empathetic.
Yes.
So-
Yes, we do.
So King Sadiq, I really have learned a lot. And I want to know, what is your projection of the use of your book? What would you like your book to be used for?
Okay. Thank you for asking that, because I had that in mind in writing the book. Right now, I'm one who believes in a lack of limitations. And with that in mind, I would like for just about everyone on the planet, probably especially those folks who have influence, to take this journey with me. Not to align themselves with anything that I determine to be true, or my truth, but to get to what I hope the book inspires everyone to find, which is your own truth. And I think when we go through the process of taking that journey together, the journey that I hope my book inspires us all to take together, I think that we can all gain perspective. And I think perspective is a very powerful tool, because the way you look at any given situation or circumstance determines the amount of options or solutions that you are able to develop in relationship to that. And we need better solutions out of the folks who are in positions of power, who set policy, the folks who are active and impactful in all of our institutions. Again, religion, agriculture, education, finance, everything. We need to have the people, right? I'll borrow from the Black Panthers' main theme: empower to the people, all power to all people, right? We need to have the people, quite frankly, put back in power. We've slowly seen that erode from our civilization over a long stretch of time. And it is the length of that long stretch that has allowed us to fall asleep and not notice that the power has so immensely slipped away from the people. So I would like to see my book be instrumental in that, and instrumental in helping everyone, again, to find their own truth and empowering themselves to take whatever steps they can, because we all have different ways that we fit into this. Some of us are leaders, some of us are organizers, some of us are folks who get in the face of our politicians. Some of us are folks who provide daycares and warmth in our communities and spur that on through our children. There's a myriad of ways we can all be involved, but the power ultimately and how all of this is implemented in our society and our civilization on a whole has got to rest back with the people who make up that society and make up the civilization. And if my book can at all help toward that happening, and quite frankly, help any one individual in looking within themselves and finding satisfaction with the answers that they find through a free thinking, introspective process, then I feel very rewarded. I love truly everyone and everything on this planet. And I wrote this book with that at the heart of it, right? Of trying to help. So if I'm able to help in any way, I am greatly rewarded.
Well, brother, I stand up and applaud you.
Oh, thank you.
And I certainly believe your book will be a tool that will certainly inspire and encourage and give us a pathway to change some of these things we need to deal with straight on, straight forward. So if my clock is right, I don't know if my clock is right or not.
You're right.
Well, I'm making sure this thing's working over at Cicerina. So it's been a pleasure for me. I don't know if someone from UBBC wants to say some parting words. I just thank you for allowing me to have this time to share with you. It was a sure pleasure for me, an unexpected one, but I enjoyed it immensely. So,
well, thank you very much. Thank you, Brother Melvin, for taking on that responsibility to be our host today. You and King Sadiq have taken us on a literary healing journey. So we do thank you. And remember that it starts with self, and it's about connection, connecting to everything, knowing and respecting and having empathy for all living things. So I learned a whole lot, and I hope everyone came from here learning a lot from King Sadiq. We really, really appreciate it. Conversation was great. To all of you out there in the audience, we thank you for tuning in. Next week will be a treat. We're going to learn how to write from our experts, our community experts. So come on board. King Sadiq, come on board. And don't forget to purchase King Sadiq's book, Love, Respect, and what was it?
Let me jump in real quick here, sis. First of all, no, really, thank you for letting me have just another moment. I cannot express enough my gratitude to all of you. Truly, I thank you very much. And I extend that to our audience wholeheartedly. Thank you all so much for listening and joining us. Yes, you can get my book available right now on Amazon.com. It's entitled Peace, Love, Respect. This is
I
the
forgot
new way.
Okay.
Peace, Love, Respect. This is the new way by King Sadiq. And you can get to it very easily by going to my YouTube channel, which is Big King Sadiq, spelled S-A-D-I-Q. There's a lot of very positive and I think powerful information there in the videos. Please check those out. And there's a link directly to my book from my YouTube channel. It's in the About section on your mobile version, and it's right on the front page for the desktop version. So again, I love you all, and I thank you all from the bottom of my heart tremendously.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much. And we'll see you next week. Don't forget, remember what James Baldwin said, read, 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 read.
Yes.
Never stop reading. And when you can't read anymore, write.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.